So Austin is reviewing Destiny 2 Lightfall expansion for us, and Austin, your consensus was Lightfall is alarmingly bad so far.
Certainly not the worst period in Destiny history, definitely not even close on that, but I think it is the biggest back-to-back dip in quality we've ever seen. I think this expansion has been the most disappointing that I've ever played. Going from Forsaken into Shadowkeep was not great, but we weren't as invested in the story back then, so it didn't really hurt as much. The Witch Queen was so good. We were riding such a massive high, narratively, mechanically, because we had the 3.0 subclasses. It was such an excellent expansion, and the story was so good that going into this, it is just whiplash, because it is this would be worse than a pre-Witch Queen expansion. So compared to the Witch Queen, it is just night and day.
Now, if anybody wants to go and read Austin's full review in progress and then the final review, go to the link in the description because it's a great read. For now, though, we're going to focus on what Bungie could do to improve Destiny for the new raid on March the 10th and the next expansion next year. So, Austin, what are the biggest problems that they need to fix, both for the raid and for next year?
The biggest concern for a lot of people, including me, is that there is no balance patch for the story, for the campaign. We just have to move on from here. But Bungie can just paste over what's happened, which really is a pretty thorough butchering of several major plot points, I would say. And so a lot of things in Lightfall are going to need tuning, right? So we can buff Strand if we need to after all the fragments are out and we can really see the class at its full potential. If it needs to be a little hotter, it can be buffed. We can adjust the armor mods because we have definitely lost a lot of our power. I know some people are frustrated with that vacuum and want to see more options. We can adjust that. Bungie has systems with levers and knobs there, but they can't buff the story post-release. We're just stuck with it. Lightfall has, if anything, made the story worse and hasn't progressed it very much.
I think it wouldn't be as bad if they hadn't set this up as you're going to get answers, this is going to start closing it down. And then for reading your review in progress, story-wise, without spoiling anything, they haven't given you the answers that they have given you are worse, and the way that they've done it is worse, and it doesn't really matter what they do for the next expansion. Those things are going to have to exist in the world, and those story beats are going to have to be there, and you're just oh, great.
It feels like the only option is really to kind of amputate some stuff, because it is a huge concern for the final shape. The main thread of the Witch Queen, especially in the launch season with that expansion, was very clear and coherent, and now I simply do not trust the architects of this story to bring this 9 or 10 year saga to a satisfying conclusion. But it's all Bungie is the thing. So we know they have it in them. They've done it before. But now the goodwill and the confidence there has just, I think a lot of it has been burned overnight.
Obviously, storyline wise, they can't really do too much about that. But what would you want as a redemption? What would you want to see in that raid?
Generally, raids are not a direct continuation of the expansion story, and Bungie does that because they know most players don't raid, so they don't want to lock the story behind an activity that some people might not want to or might not be able to complete. Maybe they're not interested, they can't find a team, whatever it is. It can still have a compelling kind of supporting act, and at this point it's hard to have anything worse than what we have in the Lightfall campaign. So any interesting offshoot of, for example, there was a somewhat recurring character who comes up in one of the, I think it's a strike we played during the Lightfall campaign as one of the missions, Nezarek. We've seen some stuff from him in a previous season. He's been kind of a lore character for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if he is at least playing some part in the raid, if not maybe the final boss or whatever. That could be interesting because, so for example, the season of Defiance, which is the season that's launched with the Lightfall expansion, is quite interesting on its own, and the activities for it actually seem very good so far. The loot is pretty interesting. There's some cool stuff with Mara and some old kind of tower and farm characters. It's a lot more character focused. We're seeing some more Crow stuff, which is always fun. That is already more interesting and appealing to me than Lightfall, so I'm basically just focusing on that at this point.
So it's a case of listen to the fans, see what they're responding to positively that has come out of Lightfall, and then just double down on that.
What I want to see Bungie carry forward is the stuff with the Witness and the Traveler and Callus, who were all these big major players in the universe, and now they're all finally in close proximity. All these major pieces are moving together. A lot of the stuff in the Lightfall campaign was kind of divorced from that. We would see these great cutscenes with Callus and the Witness, and then we'd go back to doing whatever the hell we were doing on Neo Muna, and it really couldn't compare. The raid is again going to be, I think, a big piece of the puzzle of giving people something to look forward to. The new guns are going to have the potential to be the best raid guns we've ever had because they'll have, for the first time, enhanced stats and perks and also hopefully some unique perks from the raid. And then the raid armor is also going to be interesting because raid mods should be easier to use on a build now, and potentially quite a bit more impactful as well, because a lot of our other mods have been toned down. So raid mods and collecting those and using those
and you could also
quite
they
exciting.
could also integrate something like with the new in-game loadout system, so that you have to swap loadouts mid-activity within the raid, maybe as a puzzle element or something interesting like that, to kind of keep everybody on their toes using the new system, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think the loadouts are going to be great in the raid, because it really does feel like witchcraft to just instantly, I'm talking like it's literally less than a second on PC at least, to change everything you have. It's going to be much easier, right, to go into the raid with multiple loadouts prepared, and you'll be able to tackle so many different situations versus in terms of like certain types of shields you might need to counter, although that's thankfully easier because you don't have match game anymore. Like shields you need to counter groups of enemies, one single big guy. You'll be able to change your DPS weapon and have the mods for it already equipped without having to kind of fuss around with your loadout so much, which just kind of wastes time.
It would be great if the raid brings in the Strand subclass and gets you to use all those abilities that you weren't able to even use in the campaign.
Yeah, it barely comes up because there's these little like empowerment sections where you find these kind of concentrations of Strand, and it juices up your super and your cooldowns and stuff, and you get to really play around with it in those little moments. But you don't unlock the full subclass like for your own. You have your aspects, you have your fragments until after you clear the last mission of the campaign. So it's available to you, but only in bits and pieces, and you can't build craft with it. You don't really get a true sense of it, especially because your cooldowns are warped in those empowerment bits. I think it would be quite cool to see some of those kind of Strand buffs in the raid and have it kind of built around it. Like, hey, we're going to have to grapple through this section. And if they put the little Strand buffs in, no matter what build you're running, you can still do it, even if you don't have Strand equipped at the time.
You could have some mental platforming sections that they love to put in, and you're just like, you get to this huge cavern and you're like, what, this is massive, I can't jump that. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. And you're having to Spider-Man around. I
think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, I mean, the raid is going to have to fill in, I think, for the excitement of a good story. You know, Savathûn and the Witch Queen shaped and fueled our expectation, speculations for so long. People were just eager to talk about it and theorycraft, but I think almost nobody is going to be theorycrafting over Lightfall. If anything, we'll be trying to see what can be salvaged, because there is so little here to work with. The raid is a big opportunity, and I don't really expect it to be bad. They've never really done a bad raid. The worst raids in Destiny are still excellent activities, but I also didn't expect Lightfall to have such a weak story. So again, I don't have the same degree of confidence.
The final expansion, called The Final Shape, which is meant to cap off the game's Lightness and Darkness saga, which to a certain extent is basically Destiny 1 and 2. With that coming, and how disappointing this is, what do you personally want to see in The Final Shape? Do you want answers? Do you not really care about answers as much as a good storyline? Do you want more lore? Do you want just good combat? For you, considering how unfortunate this has been, what do you feel The Final Shape needs?
Like, I'd love to see a 6th subclass, for example. I'd love to see an entirely new enemy race. I think answers is the main thing, but after Lightfall, I think the biggest issue is clarity. I want a clear and specific explanation of what the Witness wants and what the Traveler is, and the relationship between the two as these kind of diametric forces.
And just clear lines from the start of Destiny to where we are now.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily need to be complete answers, but like, this is connected to this like this, and the lines can keep going. We don't know where the line ends and what the answer is at the end of it. But like you say, just like a clarity. And we're not screwing you over. These are there are more mysteries to unsolve, but the last 2 games and all the time that you put in, this is the result.
Like, I want something clear and definitive of either, does it have to be a who wins or who loses thing? Because it may not be a matter of wins and losses. There may be some interesting gray areas to explore. And I think a lot of people have said the same thing if they just feel lost. Like, you pay attention to everything in the campaign, you read all the missions, you read all the lore, and you'll still have no clue what's going on because it's just not explained in game.
I think the other thing that really has always annoyed me about Destiny, especially the lore, is they're not tied into, say, like a book series or like an established universe. You guys are making this stuff up, but it's like, if you guys are making this up, then you can pull it together. You can make whatever cockamamie sci-fi magic star universe, like, you know, back in time Osiris stuff you want to make it make sense. It's like they willfully don't want to.
I really do think that the lack of a central character like Savathûn is being felt very keenly here. The Witness is interesting, like a very fascinating antagonist. They're basically the face of the darkness now.
Oh.
And they have Callus beside them as their newest disciple, and Callus is an old guard enemy. Everyone loves Callus, at least, I think. He's a very, like, charismatic and fun guy to hate. But neither of them have sort of appeal that Savathun had, where she was sympathetic and she was a tragic character. We don't have that tentpole figure to build things around right now.
Maybe it's the parent in me, but you just sound like, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
That's exactly what one of my my clanmates said. They said that verbatim. Like, it's like one of those lines that parents use. I'm not angry, I'm disappointed.
I'm not really pissed off. It doesn't feel like a massive waste of money. It's just...
Yeah, like, the game's going to be fun. I'm going to put a lot of time into it, playing with friends, and I'm going to have a good time. But, like, I look at where I am today versus where I was a week ago in the last few days of the Season of Seraph, and the game is worse.
Okay, well, on that note, it does seem like it's unfortunately the same old Destiny. The gunplay and the combat is great, but it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like, just as the Witch Queen expansion was working in the right direction, they've made the same mistakes that they seemingly aren't always learning from, which is worrying for the raid on March 10th and the Final Shape expansion in 2024. If you want to comment below and let us know, are you liking Lightfall? Are you scared about what's coming up next? And what do you want to see for the Final Shape in 2024? Let us know in the comments below.